So here we are with the stock Indian air cleaner, and the first part of this is going to be the removal of the stock air cleaner, including the throttle body, with the exception of the throttle body mounting plate. According to the VooDoo instructions, you leave the throttle body mounting plate installed. So to do this, we're just going to use some simple common tools. We're going to use a 3/8 inch ratchet, a 3/8 inch ratchet extension, a 3/8 inch 8mm socket, a 3/8 inch 4mm hex bit, or you could use a 4mm Allen key, and a 3/8 drive 5mm hex bit, or you could use a 5mm Allen key. So the first we got to start off, we got to remove these 3 socket head screws that use the 4mm Allen key or hex bit. Now these have been loosened a little bit when I did my initial inspection of the air cleaner assembly, so I only put them back on hand tight. So when I open this, you're going to see something, I hope, that I noticed on most bikes. Yep, here you can see it. So what happens is, on most motorcycles, and most vehicles for that matter, there is an engine gas recirculation. So what happens is the pressure that builds up underneath the engine here has to go somewhere. So what most manufacturers do is they exit that out through a valve cover and then recycle that back into the intake. So all of the evaporated moisture, the gases that are created during combustion that slip by the piston rings, they get trapped down in the crankcase and there's nowhere to go. So they do a crankcase breather, and you can see right up here through this hole, it comes back in and then it gets sucked back in the intake. And it's difficult to see, but I'll tell you, there is some evidence you can see there of that oily mixture that goes back into the intake. Now I don't like that. So what I'm going to do as part of this is I'm going to reroute that so that it doesn't come back into the intake. So you can notice up here there's definitely some yellow coloring from where the oil has mixed in. Now mind you, this motorcycle only has 2,000 miles on it, and it's already got this much residue on it. And if you look in here, I don't know if you can see it real well, like right here, it's actually like oily. It's almost like Vaseline. Super, you can see that there. And I want to prevent that from going into the intake, because what happens is that gets on top of your piston, behind your valves, your intake valves, if you don't have direct injection, and that basically sits and creates carbon buildup either on your valves and or on the top of your pistons, which isn't good for the longevity of the bike. So most common thing to do is you just run an external vent somewhere down the bike, just to a common vent, and then you never have to worry about all that crappy gas mix going back into your engine. All right, so the next step is we're going to take off this backing plate, and we're going to use the 5mm hex with our 3/8 ratchet. Break those loose. So once those are broke, I'll go ahead and take those out. It's definitely, like if you're like me and you're planning on, keeping the bike for a long time, there's a lot of things you can do that are fairly simple like this that will help you improve the longevity of your bike. And usually the two big destroyers of an engine are heat and friction, and that's what we're going to help prevent here. All right, so the plate comes off super easy. Now we have the air filter element. The air filter element is just held on. It kind of goes on these 3 standoffs here, and all you got to do is grab it and pull. And you can see actually there is some residue here from where the oil was, you know, coming in and then getting sucked in. So, all right, so that's that. You can see it does, you know, show some dirt even for 2,000 miles, and that exposes our throttle body assembly. So, I don't know if we can see that so well. Let me try and get a better light here. There we go. So on the throttle body, normally there's an electrical connector right here. I have it disconnected already. It just slides through here. It's got 2 push buttons. You just squeeze on it and pull it right out. It's got a keeper right here, and boom, you're good to go. All right, so the next item is taking off the throttle body itself. So once the electrical connection is disconnected, there are 4 bolts. They're socket-headed bolts that'll use a hex bit or an Allen key here, 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 and here. Now these will be Loctited in, so when you initially break them, they may take a little bit of force to get them, but once you get them, they'll come out fairly easy. Make sure I got the right tool. Okay, and this is where I use the extension and my ratchet. I'm going to keep all these bolts and all this hardware and once I get the throttle body off, it's a good idea to just do an inspection of it. And because of the residue that was in there, I'm going to go ahead and shoot some either isopropyl alcohol or some brake cleaner in there once it's disconnected. You might as well, since it's off, you might as well clean it and set it up. All right, there we go. All right, so with this last one, I'm going to try and hold it in place while I disconnect it to prevent it from housing, or prevent it from falling. Again, in here, there is some, you can see some oily residue that I will, you know, make sure everything's clean. Now this isn't going back on, but once it's off, you know, I'll probably sell it or whatever. So the next thing is, once this is off, there's basically like a little bushing and an O-ring keeper that mounts to the back of this, and I'll show it to you once we get out, but it's probably going to fall down a little bit. Not a big deal, just keep it in mind. I got it. So hold it in place, remove that last screw, hold this, and out comes the throttle body assembly. It's that simple. It's always good to inspect the pins inside, you know, check your surfaces for any wear or any stuck O-ring or any material that could have gotten put in there. So we'll set that off to the side. And here, so now all we got to do is take this one little last, it's the one socket we needed, out. So we'll swap that. And all of this is mounted to that bracket that the VooDoo assembly told us to keep in place. So in the back, before I take that off, now you can see this is that 2-piece seal, and it's just basically a little bushing that goes in there to, you know, to make sure that everything seals up optimally. So once we go, oh, all right. So that's off. Get this one screw, and there's a washer in there. So you can see, I don't know if I could show it to you well. No, you can't see it. There is some oil in there that I will clean up. So here's the electrical connector I was showing you and the bushing that they provided. Now we're basically down. This is the mounting plate, and that's it. That is the removal of the stock air cleaner assembly. And next what I'm going to do is, you can see in here I got some more oily residue. I'm going to clean all this up, clean up the throttle body, and then we're going to move right into the installation of the VooDoo cleaner. Alright, so we're ready to continue on with the installation of the VooDoo assembly air intake. But before we move on, I wanted to show you a couple things. I went through and I just used some simple isopropyl alcohol. Generally, you know, any solvent type will work. And I cleaned out the intake runner of the intake manifold. I've cleaned off the breather. Here's the breather hose connection. Here's the breather hose itself that basically came down. It just pushes on right here. I cleaned that off really well. I've cleaned off the intake side of the throttle body assembly, the throttle blade assembly, and made sure that the seating surface and the intake on this side was also good to go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to mount the backing plate for the VooDoo assembly. So what's going to happen is in here it comes with two O-rings. One of them's going to go in this channel right here. The other one's going to go on the back, and we're going to put it right here. And then when we mount the throttle body assembly, it's going to hold all of this in place. So I've already pre-lubed. I've used some O-ring lubricant to lube the O-rings. You can use used motor oil, anything that's not basically corrosive to the O-ring material. Most times they tell you to use whatever material or substance it's going to be protecting against. Like if you're using it in a motor oil, you would use a little bit of used motor oil to do that. And what that does is it allows the O-ring to slide very easily into place, and it prevents it from getting bound or pinched, so that way it doesn't get caught up and create a weak spot. So what I have this all ready to go. So that's going to mount just like that. And I'll take the throttle body assembly, holding the plate, and it's going to mount like this. I'm going to hold it in place. I've already got my screws that came with the kit, and I've pre-installed some blue Loctite. Now, blue Loctite is the medium strength Loctite that is basically for bolts that you are going to take out potentially in the future. So I'm going to slide that in one of the holes so I can get this started. I'm going to grab my hex bit. We're back to the 5mm, and basically the VooDoo, they set it up real nice, so you pretty much a 5mm hex bit is going to be able to do everything we want it to do to install this whole assembly. Alright, so once I got that on, I'm going to screw that into place just enough to hold it. I want to make sure that my O-rings stay in their channels. And then we're going to go do the same thing over here. Line everything up. We're going to get that in. There we go. So now I got two of them installed. I can reach back, see that the O-ring is still in place on both sides. And then I'll get all four of my bolts started. And then I'll snug them up. Yeah, the way the Loctite works is it actually uses the lack of air to help it cure. As long as it's touching air, generally it's not going to cure, and when it gets in that threaded position, it'll the lack of oxygen allows it to solidify, which helps lock the threads in place. There's two considerations you should have when you're applying Loctite: whether or not the hole you're going into has a bottom or if it's a through hole. These are a through hole, so it doesn't matter. But generally, if you have a bottom hole or a hole that you're going to screw into that has a bottom that the screw cannot penetrate through, you want to make sure that you don't get any Loctite or any fluid on the bottom of the screw there, because once it goes into place, it'll act as like a barrier and prevent it from fully seating and fully screwing in. But for this application, they're all through holes, so there's very little concern with that. And we're in good shape. Just screw those in. Make sure everything lines up good as we're screwing it in. And I'm real excited about this air cleaner because the dyno charts show it provides just as much increase in flow as any other air cleaner. But the good thing about this is throughout the entire dyno, the temperature spikes are pretty much non-existent for this air cleaner, which means that throughout the entire process of accelerating, the air is going to maintain a specific temperature, which allows the engine to run way more efficiently. All right, so now we have the throttle body mounted by all 4 bolts and tightened down. So now we're gonna route the throttle body electrical connector up into just like that. So the next, there's actually 2 pieces, the mating ring and the part that's actually going to cover the throttle body assembly. So these 2 need to get put on the same time, and they're going to mount to 4 holes right here using these flathead screws. So I'm going to start one of them. I got both pieces together. And I'm just going to get these started enough until we can get them all. Whoops. First one in loosely, and this second one will help get everything lined up. Alright, once these 2 are in hand tight, everything else should go in good to go. So we've got those lined up. Yeah, I'm real excited to see how well this performs. It's a very nice intake, and you know, with all the changes you can make to it, you know, changing this faceplate, the outer ring provides a lot of options to really, you know, make it unique. I like black. I'm not a big chrome fan, so I went with the black, but you know, the chrome and the red look good, you know, depending on the color of your bike. It really provides some adjustability to however you want it. So next we have the dry filter that slides in there, seats perfectly, very well machined. And then finally is going to be the faceplate with the standoffs. So you want to make sure that the VooDoo is on the bottom. Just finger start all of these. You can see how simple this really is. Those standoffs are nice because they prevent the faceplate from crushing the filter too much and distorting it, because the filter really relies on its shape to filter to the level that it says it's gonna. All right. Snug these up a little bit. You could hear it right when it gets to the point where it starts going. Yep. And that's it. Then all we got to do clean it up a little bit, and we're done. That's everything. So there it is, the VooDoo cleaner installed. I'm excited to get it going. So again, if you guys need any help or you're interested in this product, I would definitely give the guys at Fuel Moto a call. They have always been top-notch with me, supporting every project I've had, from Harleys to custom bikes, and now this Indian. They're great to talk to. Those guys, when it comes to tuning and performance, are second to none. So do yourself a favor, give them a call. They'll definitely point you in the right direction. So I hope this helped you with very simple tools, some Loctite, some O-ring grease. We were able to replace this, you know, in under an hour. So good luck. I hope you guys venture on and decide to do something like this yourselves.